I want to walk again someday. I know I am. Life was great. It really was. You know, I had a typical childhood. Maybe it wasn't typical childhood, but it was great for me. I was able to run around growing up. After chores were done, I was able to go and play with my friends. There was a canal behind our house, a couple blocks away, and we'd go down there and swing across the canal as kids in the summertime. We'd crack the ice in the wintertime, and we would hooky bob behind cars in the wintertime and throw snowballs at vehicles. Just, normal mischievous things that kids did. Didn't know how um, I don't want to say poor, but I didn't realize that I didn't have a lot of stuff because it felt like I had everything. I really did. Mom and dad that loved me. I had food in my belly, and I was able to play and just experience life. I loved it. I remember, ever since I was a little kid, my dream was always to play football on the big stage. I always wanted to play. I would sit down in the basement and I'd throw the ball up in the air and just dream about playing down in LaVell Edwards Stadium and playing for the next Hall of Fame quarterback. And it was awesome. It was great. When I received the letter from LaVell Edwards, I was so stoked and so excited to go down there and visit with him and see what was up. And we decided that it would be best to go up and play football at Ricks College. It's now BYU Idaho, and I went up there and played a season and only got in 2 plays. I was on the scrub team. It shocked my world, going from a big fish in a small pond, now being a small fish in a big pond, and I struggled with that. I really did. I was excited to come back the next year and had to earn some money, and so I went down to Logan, where I'm from, and started my business. Business was booming. Things were great. And I got a phone call from Napoleon Dynamite Country up there in Preston, Idaho, and 3 days later, and $3,000 richer, I'd have enough money to go back to college, get a bullet bike, and go back to school. I remember a Saturday, the Saturday before my accident. We were out on the lake and water skiing and slalom skiing, and we were having a great time. A bunch of my friends and I were out there on the lake, and we even boxed on the bow of the boat. It was fun, exciting, and I remember it just being a great afternoon. Did a little fishing, and that night we went on a campus to see if we can pick up on the ladies and see what we could do there. And of course, we probably had bigger dreams than what we were able to do there. But it was great. It was awesome. Life was wonderful, especially for a young man who seemed like he had everything going for him. That Monday, 2 days later, my world changed. It was night and day. It was. I could have never imagined what would have happened. But that Monday morning, I got up early, got the equipment in the back of the truck, went and picked up my buddy, my co-worker, and we went up to Preston, Idaho. And when we hit the Utah-Idaho border, there was road construction, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, there's this many people in Idaho, because there was bumper-to-bumper traffic. But we were able to talk about the important things in life, at least to us. Right? We thought that girls, football, and bungee jumping. I was going to go bungee jumping that night, and I had never been. I was excited to go, and we get up there eventually, pulled out the scaffolding, put 2 levels of scaffolding on top of each other, and then put a 30-foot ladder on top of that. I go into much more detail with this story when I share this in front of audiences and in corporations. But I remember my buddy yelling up at me. He's like, "Hey, Griff, I know you don't have a bungee cord, but I want you to remember that you don't have any safety." And I'm like, whatever, nothing's going to happen. And I get up there and I lifted my arm above my head, and that infamous feeling that we all felt in grade school, I felt that, and the ladder moved, and I was falling. I needed to do something quick, and at the bottom of the loft doors was 1-inch ledge. I reached out to grab onto that and got a hold of it, and I was holding on to dear life, but because of the weight of my body and the pull of gravity, it caused my fingers to pop off. the ledge, not my hands. Everyone gets a crack out of that. They always think that my fingers popped off my hands, but never did. But my fingers popped off the ledge, and I was falling. And of course, few seconds, split seconds later, I hit the ground straight-legged, and my legs came up, and my back came down, and my L1 vertebrae exploded inside of me. And as I hit the ground, I reached down to alleviate the pain in my legs, and my hand could feel my legs, but my legs could not feel my hands. And I knew instantly that something horrible, something bad had just happened. The x-rays showed that my L1 vertebrae had exploded and had left me paralyzed from the waist down. When I got that news, it was like I had just been boxing on the bow of the boat again with somebody, going 9 rounds and getting hit and getting knocked out. The room started to spin, and I'm like, no way. My life literally changed overnight, and my back shattered, my dream shattered. I fell 40 feet, and I had to pick up the pieces. I had to figure out what next. What do I do? I could either sit down, lay down, and quit, or I could get back up and dream again. What's interesting is a lot of people are like, oh man, I bet it's just horrible, to be in a wheelchair. You can't walk, you can't do all those things. Honestly, being in a wheelchair is not the worst thing that I've had to deal with after my accident. I would say one of the biggest challenges is getting over the fact that people tend to stare. People tend to stare for whatever reason. I was rolling down the sidewalk. A mom and child was coming up the sidewalk, and of course kids say what adults think, and this kid looks up to his mom and says, mom, why is that guy in a wheelchair? And the mom's nudging her son and saying, shh, Tommy, don't be rude. Even though I could see on her face that she wanted to know herself, and it wasn't a big deal. So I looked Tommy in the eye. I didn't have to get down. We were at eye level, and I'm like, Tommy, do you really want to know why I got hurt? He's like, yeah, I do. I'm like, my mom stepped on a crack, and it broke my back. And his eyes get big, and his concern, he's like, oh my gosh. And as they walked away, you could see mom and child trying to miss the cracks, so they wouldn't do that. But one time I got called out on that. I said that to a kid, and I'm like, hey, you want to know why I got in a wheelchair? He's like, yeah. I'm like, because my mom stepped on a crack. And he's like, he sat there for a second. He's like, mister, if your mom stepped on a crack, that would have broken her mom's back. And I'm like, busted, you got me. And just have some fun with that. But it really disturbed me, having people stare at me. I remember the first time rolling into the weight room up at Utah State, and you know how loud weight rooms are. You have the clinking of the metals, of the weights going on, the music's going, and there's people grunting and whatnot in weight rooms. I remember rolling in there, and as soon as I rolled in and I hand over my cards to get into the weight room there at Utah State, the place gradually got silent. It was like a wave. It was like a wave of silence just hitting them. People stopped lifting weights. People stopped talking, and they stared at me as I rolled into the weight room. And it seemed like even the music stopped playing, and all eyes were on me. And I'm like, oh my goodness, now what? I was about to turn around and roll away, but I'm like, no, I came here to lift weights. So I went in there and I lifted up a 45-pound plate, put it on the bench on one side, rolled around, got another 45-pound plate, put it on the bench on the bar, and got on the bench while everyone's staring. And it was deafening. The silence was deafening. And so I laid down on the bench, positioned myself. I didn't have any balance like I used to, and lifted up the bar and started lifting. And after about 4 or 5 reps, everyone turned around. It was like instantly the music turned on. People started lifting, talking, and the noise came back in. But that's been one challenge that I've had to deal with after my accident. But understanding that people are looking at me, it's given me a platform that perhaps I might not have had before. And with that, I get to be an example. I get to be an example of what my dream and goal is today, and that is to walk again, to overcome the impossible. The doctors told me I'd never walk again. The doctors told me I'd never run again. the doctors told me I'd never have kids again. And to be able to have this platform where people are looking has been a blessing in disguise, and I'm excited. I'm excited to inspire millions to know that the impossible really is possible. I really do believe in Philippians, where all things are possible with Christ, and it's been a journey. There was a moment from the accident, the site of the accident, to the hospital, where pain. I didn't have medication. I didn't have anything to help with the pain, and it was excruciating pain. And I remember, knocking my friends out, boxing and whatnot, and I wanted to pass out. I wanted to get rid of this pain, and so I tried holding my breath. That didn't work. I asked one of the EMTs to knock me out, to hit me in the head, and they're like, no, we can't do that. And so I tried to tell jokes to get rid of the pain, to just focus on something else, and it was just excruciating. For 3 hours, I drove on dirt roads, pockmarked with holes and other debris that the wheels were rolling over, and then the vibration would go up the wheels, up the bus, into my back, and it was just excruciating pain. And I remember halfway in that journey that I had a moment that I found peace. I found peace in the pain, and I knew that my Savior knew who I was, knew what I was going through, and was going to be there to help me out. And so, first and foremost, my Savior Jesus Christ, our Savior Jesus Christ. And so he's been a great help. Of course, my family, my mom and dad. My mom's amazing. She's had 8 kids. She grew up on a farm during the Depression, and my mom and dad have been amazing, right? They've just been there the whole time. And if it wasn't for them and the principles and teachings that they taught me growing up, I don't think I would have made it through this ordeal. And then there's my friends. My friends that have always helped me out. They've kept me grounded. They've reminded me that I'm just me. That my wheelchair is just something that helps me get from point A to point B. I remember one time I took one of my friends to Lagoon, an amusement park here in Salt Lake City, and we went to Lagoon, and we realized that people in wheelchairs could go to the front of the line, and you could go twice if you wanted to. And we've never experienced that before, and so we brought some dates down there, and so we were getting in the front of the line, and we were going from ride to ride to ride without having to sit in line or stand in line. And I remember after getting off the Colossus, it's one of those rides where you got 2 loops there, and we were coming off the ride, and my buddy turns around and he's backpedaling, and at the top of his lungs he's just so grateful and happy that he can skip the lines, and without knowing what he said, but it was quite funny. He's like, Griff, I'm so happy you're handicapped. And I'm like, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. But yeah, they appreciate the front row parking. They appreciate cutting in lines. They appreciate some other perks that come along with being in a wheelchair. Which reminds me, it was kind of funny when I first got hurt. Just to let you know a little bit about my mom. When I started receiving some of these perks, as some people would call it, others would say that they're just necessities. But I remember my mom telling me, she's like, Jeff, no, I don't care what they say or what you do, I don't want you to take advantage of your wheelchair. And I looked into my mom's eyes and just smiled, and her heart of hearts, she's trying to let me know that don't take advantage of it. And I try not to. I really do. And in fact, what's interesting is a lot of people will tell me this. So like, Griff, I keep forgetting that you're in a wheelchair. And I think if I've done that, then I've done a great job in letting people know that we can live life to the fullest. We really can. And we can enjoy it. And we can find the good in all things. I really do think that we can do that. The first and foremost, like I mentioned before, right, that I found peace in the pain, but there have been several instances, in several moments, right? It doesn't matter who you are. You go through those moments of self-pity. I call it entering into the sauna of self-pity. You don't want to stay there too long. You don't. You get soft, you get weak. It's not a good thing. It's comfortable at times and it's enjoyable at times, but you don't want to stay there in the sauna of self-pity. And one of the greatest lessons that I've learned throughout this journey is those dark days, those dark moments. There's always a new dawn. And in those moments, I get to see a glimmer, and I get to glance at who I am. I get to see where I come from, who I'm a part of. I have DNA of a supreme being. I have DNA from God, and I know that God knows me, and I know that He loves me, and it's just comforting. It really is. It just brings me such joy and happiness to know that there is a God out there, and that He does love me, He does care for me, and that He does know who I am. He knows who all of us are, and that gives me the hope to know that I can become just as powerful and just as great. Get on the dance floor and dance. You can't be on the sideline. You got to get out there and you got to dance. And what I mean by that is I hated dancing. I really did. The only reason I went there is because the girls were there and I wanted to get the girl. And so I learned how to dance the least amount of that I needed to. And I remember after my accident, my friends wanted to go up to the college dance. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, who'd want to dance with a guy in a wheelchair? That was my thought. I'm like, who would want to dance with a guy in a wheelchair? I'm like, I wouldn't want to dance with me. And I didn't know how to do it. I had no idea. I had no clue how it was going to happen. So they convinced me. I went up there. I roll into the dance floor, and if it's anything like if you think it's with anything like the weight room, exactly. It almost seemed like the music stopped. People stopped. They turned. They looked at me, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I wanted to run. I wanted to turn around and roll away, but my friends blocked me off. And I got there, and I kind of settled down, and that awkward feeling that you get when you first try something new started to subside, and I'm still thinking to myself, how am I going to ask somebody to dance? And I remember just my friends, without even asking me, they grabbed me and they rolled me out to the floor, and they started dancing around me, and they wouldn't let me leave. And so I eventually started to move a little bit with my body, and I did a wheelie and started moving my chair, and then eventually there was this circle surrounding me, and everyone was staring. I'm like, oh my goodness, I really didn't like that. And so we had it was awkwardly fun, if I could say that. And this next song was a slow song. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? And I always imagined that the bullet bike that I was going to buy with my money to go up to college was going to help me pick up on the ladies, but I had no idea that the girls dug the wheels. I thought they liked the wheels, the bullet bike, but I didn't think that they would like the wheelchair. And by the end of the night, there was a line of girls wanting to dance with me. It was wonderful. The slow songs would sit on my lap, put their arm around my neck, and we would go in circles and whatnot. And it was an innocent lap dance, right? It was great. It was a great experience to just be able to go up there and dance. I would have never done it if it wasn't for my friends. I would have never done it or imagined that it could have been done. But it wouldn't have happened if I didn't go. It wouldn't have happened if I didn't get on the dance floor. If my friends wouldn't have dragged me on the dance floor. And so this idea of get out on the dance floor and dance. Listen to the music. Listen to the music that is playing in your mind. Go and get on the dance floor. Move. Do the things that you need to do. And even though other people may not be able to hear it or see it or imitate it or do whatever, you know what's in your heart of hearts, and get out there and dance and make things happen. Turn the impossible into the possible. Open up the door and walk out. There are so many times that we have closed ourselves in from the door of doubt. The doubts that we tell ourselves and we believe in and we listen to, it keeps us imprisoned. It keeps us from experience what's out there. And an example, I've been rolling around in my house. My grandmother lived with us, and she got around with a walker, and I'm like, I'm going to try this. There's a little bit of movement in my legs, and I'm like, I'm going to try this. So I took my grandmother's walker from her. She was sitting down at the time. That'd been mean. But I grabbed her walker and got up. It took me about 5 minutes to get up, just on the walker, and then I was able to at least lift my hip muscles. So I lift my leg up with one hip and lifted up, and then swung my leg forward, and went down. And I did the same thing with my left side. Lifted my hip up, swung my leg forward, and went down, and dragged my feet. And I did that. From where I started to where the door was 20 feet. And it took me half an hour to get there. And I'm exhausted. I was perspiring. Sweat was running down my face. And my grandmother couldn't come and help me. She was in her seat, and I had to turn around and go again. And it took me an hour to get back the other 20 feet. And it took an hour and a half to go 40 feet. I didn't even open up the door. But I got to the door. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. I got a little bit quicker, got a little bit faster, got to the door and opened it up. And there was a ramp that seemed like it was the K-12. I was going down the K-12, and it seemed like I was going to tip over, but I ventured down the ramp, out the door, down the ramp, to the edge of my driveway. 6 months later, I got to the road. A few months later after that, I actually went down the road. And I remember about getting 15 feet from the stop sign, and it was a 3-block journey. And I got about 15 feet from the stop sign, and one of my neighbors drove up the road and waved to me. And about 15 minutes later, I see the same guy coming down the road, waving to me, doing a double take like this. He didn't even move. And my one neighbor said that he had to put up his hand to his face to see if I was actually moving. That's how slow I was. But the journey's been wonderful. It's been great. None of this would have happened, and none of this improvement would have taken place if I didn't open up the door and walk through. And I call it the door of doubt. Walk through the door of doubt, break it down, go through it, go and experience the great, great blessings that are out there waiting for you. My definite purpose, I've written it down and I've memorized it and I believe it. And my definite purpose is to be a celestial heir of the Most High God, to live life to the fullest by developing talents to serve myself, my family, and friends. We live healthy, wealthy, and spiritually wise lives by living the laws of life with exactness, which brings forth prosperity and joy. That's my definite purpose. That's what I want to do. I want to inspire millions to take that first step towards purpose, that they can discover that, you know what, it is possible. I was told that I couldn't walk again. I was told that I was never going to be able to move my legs again. I was told that I couldn't have children. I've got 4 children. Some people thought I wouldn't even be able to get married, right? It had nothing to do with my wheelchair. And I'm getting to the point where I will walk again, where I will run again. And just recently I got on an elliptical bike and I ran 5 miles. 5 miles. It's been 20 years since I've been up. There's these laws that if you live them, it's impossible for you not to receive the blessings or the effects by doing it. And I know that I'm going to be able to walk again. I just refuse to accept my doctor's opinion. I refuse to. I choose to listen to my Father's opinion. I got hurt when I was 22 years old, prime of my life. So I lived my life 22 years outside of my wheelchair. I've lived 22 years in my wheelchair. And so what are my next 22 years going to be like, or my next 20 years? Well, what I've decided to do is I've made a list of 22 things that I want to do in my 22nd year of being in a wheelchair. Some of those things is go to the Vatican. I want to go to the Vatican and see the Vatican. If I meet the Pope, great. But I just want to go to the Vatican and meet and just go and visit and see that. I also want to go and harvest a field of corn. I don't know why, but that's something I want to do. It's one of my bucket lists that I want to just go and get one of those tractors and just harvest, have all this corn, this crop, this fruit that's been grown, and then just go and harvest it, mow it down, and collect the fruit. It just seems fun to me. Also, I want to go to Hawaii and tube down the sugarcane rivers. I want to go to Rio de Janeiro, and I want to pray underneath the statue of Christ there. One of them is to climb the Tetons. Get up there. I want to get to the top of the Tetons. And some people are like, you're crazy, it's not going to happen. But who's to say in a year how much improvement happens, and who's to say that it can't be done. But I want to climb the Tetons. I want to do a whole handful of other things. But I'm excited. I'm excited to do it with my family. I'm excited to do it with my friends. I'm excited to do it with friends, with strangers. And I want to live life, right? If you remember, my definite purpose is to live life to the fullest. And only in order to do that, you've got to develop your talents, and you've got to live the laws of life, and you've got to imagine and be creative, and to think beyond the world that you're in right now. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the next 20 years. I believe the next 20 years are going to be the best 20 years of my life. In my chair and out of my chair. I believe I'm going to be running again. I believe I'm going to be walking again. And I believe that what others have said to be impossible will be possible. And I'd like to invite you along the journey and come along and take a look at what's going on here. I chose to dream again. I chose to pick up the pieces, and I chose to dream new dreams. And I'm excited because of what's happened so far. And looking back, this happened 20 years ago, and looking back, I can see how much I've been able to do, probably more so than if I wasn't in a wheelchair. And I can honestly say that I'm grateful to be in a wheelchair. Dissatisfied, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be in a wheelchair, but dissatisfied. And I'm looking forward to the day where I walk again, where I run again, and where I box out my son on the basketball court, or walk my daughters hand in hand in the park, and give my wife a piggyback ride, or whatnot. But I'm excited. I'm really excited for that day when I walk again. It's going to happen. I know it is, and I'm going to run again.